Hello and welcome. I'm Rawia Alami and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from Al Arabiya studios. These are our top stories. Republicans call for a full investigation in the latest Minneapolis killing by ICE agents as protests continue across the U.S. Meanwhile, a wind and winter storm sweeps across the United States, resulting in at least 14 deaths, leaving many Americans without power. And striking gold, a historic rise for the precious metal, which reaches $5,000 an ounce for the first time ever as investors turn to safe haven assets. Republicans have called for a full investigation after a second fatal shooting in Minneapolis by immigration officers. 37-year-old Alex Pretti, an intensive care nurse, was shot by ICE agents during protests in the city over the death of Renee Nicole Good. President Trump's team have defended the officer who shot Pretti, who they say was carrying a gun. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has warned that America was at an inflection point. Take a listen.
So now we've got two Minnesotans dead. We didn't had time to start telling Renee's story of a poet and a mother and a bright spirit, and now we're telling Alex's story. So my question is, what's the plan, Donald Trump? What is the plan? What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state? You thought fear, violence, and chaos is what you wanted from us, and you clearly underestimated the people of this state and nation. If it was the intention of Donald Trump to make an example of Minnesota, then I'm damn proud of the example that the world's seeing. We believe in law and order in this state. We believe in peace. And we believe that Donald Trump needs to pull these 3,000 untrained agents out of Minnesota before they kill another person. And we're up here telling another story of a Minnesotan just trying to live their life without the interference.
Let's get the thoughts of former police officer and lawyer Charles Adam. Charles, thank you very much for being with us on the show. There's a lot of tension there. You can hear it in all the statements. Yet it seems that the White House officials and also the Department of Homeland Security officials are always eager to control the narrative, issuing statements sometimes far too early, only to be contradicted by evidence and videos afterwards. Why keep making the same mistake?
Well, I think in this 24-hour, 7-day-a-week news cycle that there's always a rush to be the first to proclaim their team is right. I mean, you played the clip from Governor Walz. Governor Walz has played a huge role in creating the urgency and the obstruction and the kind of sense of we must do something and it's okay to physically engage law enforcement. I think personally in an effort to detract from the horrible press he's getting from the overwhelming multi-billion-dollar fraud in his state that's tied to Somali migrants. But there's absolutely no doubt, right, that not only were they rushing to get out there, but that Director Patel, Secretary Noem have made absurd, ludicrous statements talking about the right to bear arms, which typically the Republican Party and me, myself, as an independent, are vehemently support. But now they're suggesting that the nurse, Pretti, did not have the right to carry the gun that he had. But more importantly, what it appears happens is that he intercedes on what may or may not have been a lawful or unlawful arrest of a female that was in the street physically, which you should not do, right? But the consequence for that is to just get arrested. And in the attempt to affect the arrest and the rolling around and possibly some effort to not be arrested, an officer sees that he is armed but not drawn, takes the gun from his waistband and accidentally discharges it as he's walking away. And that's what led to the other officers shooting and killing him, which at the very least is manslaughter. Yeah. Could be murder, but it's most certainly a crime.
It's very clear, the scenes that we see in the video, as you said, that he was shot after he was, his arms, sorry, his weapon was taken away. And at the same time, it seems that he had never drew his weapon, and that would lead me to another question. Why the hesitation, so much hesitation to conduct a proper independent investigation? Up until now, we're talking about two ICE killings within weeks of each other. No independent investigation by the Department of Justice into what exactly went on. Why the hesitation?
Well, I mean, in the first instance with Miss Good, and I have, and as an officer, been in both scenarios that may be true. The first being brushed by a car while I was on foot trying to flee a traffic stop. And then another time I was intentionally hit by someone with their car. Neither time did I shoot them. Both times me and other officers managed to effect arrests. But a car is a deadly weapon in the United States, and she most certainly brushed him with it in an attempt to flee. She has it appears her and her female spouse have some disturbing allegations, some criminal history of child abuse. And it is the type of case where it is very easy from a lawyer perspective to say, hey, this is something that he had a reasonable belief that his life was in danger. And then you compound it with the fact that the officer had been drugged by another driver, and injured significantly, I think 5 or 6 months before. So I think that was easy to move on from. I still think that it was immoral and wrong for him to shoot her. He stepped out of the way very clearly. There was no reason to pull his gun.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was illegal.
But it doesn't seem to be
argument.
the case now with Alex Pretty's shooting. Right. It was quite obvious that, the scenes that we've seen in the video.
It's absolutely, and it shows how, so when I was an officer in the 90s before I became an attorney and a judge, and I was a police officer when dash cams first emerged on patrol cars, right? And you have wearing microphones in my last couple of years of service as an officer, and it changed the math, right? And I say that cameras protect good people from bad officers, but far more often than not, they protect the truth and good officers from bad people. But here, very clearly, the prevalence of cell phone cameras and body cameras have prevented the lie that we most certainly would have heard from the government, which is what we heard immediately, which was that, he was armed and they were, protecting their own lives. And it's just simply not true. And there has to be accountability.
Okay. A lot of questions, to be honest, about this situation, these tragic events. But the president said that he is reviewing everything to do with these ICE shootings in Minneapolis. He's also said that he's considering what he's going to do next, whether it is to invoke the Insurrection Act or eventually withdraw agents from the city, from Minneapolis. What can we expect from the president at this point? A de-escalation or quite the opposite?
Well, I think the escalation has mostly been driven by the rhetoric of the Democrats, right? Especially the Democrats in Minnesota trying to divorce themselves from their bad press, right? And also the Democrats needing to seize on to something. I find what we're talking about is ICE, right? And we're not talking about the focus of this current effort, which Americans want the child molesters, the murderers, the robbers, the drunk drivers, the people that imperil Americans that are guests to this country, that if you go to any country, if you go to any country in the Arab world, any country in Asia, any country other than the West, which seems to have an incredible appetite for allowing criminals to come commit horrible crimes and stay, you would be immediately removed from the country. So if ICE was just focused on removing violent criminals with deportation orders, and we've seen people obstruct that and complain about, that's just radicals, right? I think most of America is behind that. The problem is with most everything Donald Trump does is he goes too far, right? And what we've seen is them targeting people with deportation orders not related to crime and doing sweeps, and it's just led to some chaos. But let's not forget,
Right.
Barack Obama deported far more people, and the media sat silent about it. And actually, America applauded it. So a lot of it is about media framing and Democrat narrative manipulation because, frankly, they control the media.
We don't have much time left, so in a minute, this fatal shooting has exposed some rare fractures within the Republican Party. How is that expected to influence the upcoming midterm elections?
Well, I think that the biggest thing with the midterm elections is going to be the economy. You know, I was looking at my stock portfolio this morning, and I think there's some interesting news about Ted Cruz's conversation with the president that was recorded. But I do think that the Democrats want this to be about social issues because they're doing so poorly as they've run California into the ground. They've run New York into the ground as we see many high-income taxpayers fleeing to Republican states, even those on the left, right? Silicon Valley heads. It's, you know, I think the midterms are going to be bad for Trump either way, unless the economy becomes the robust economy he promised us, and it seems like it was a lie.
Charles Adams, thank you very much for being with us on the show.
Hey,
and now let's discuss this also further with Professor Scott Lucas from the Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. Welcome, Professor Lucas, to our show. Obviously, tensions are definitely rising to even a boiling point. What are the wider implications of this? We've had a second killing in Minnesota, a second ICE shooting in just a matter of weeks.
First and foremost, you have the implications for the people, the communities of Minnesota. Once we get beyond the specifics of, quite frankly, the execution, and I have seen all the videos, I've seen all the witness statements, the execution of Alex Pretti, once you get beyond the Trump camp's attempt to wish away that execution by attacking Alex Pretti as a domestic terrorist, abusing his good name. Once you get about them trying to deflect, as you heard your previous guest do, and blame the protesters, blame Democrat Governor Tim Walz, blame other officials, what you're talking about here is that this is a group of 3,000 ICE officers and more Border Patrol officers who are operating without legal authority in Minnesota. And for comparison, there are only 600 uniformed police in the Minneapolis police force, the entire force. So these men are operating without legal authority. They're not operating with warrants. They're not operating with probable cause. They are not sweeping up rapists and murderers and child abusers, as you just heard your guest said. The vast majority of people who are being swept up have not had any criminal charges filed against them. And in many cases, they've been wrongfully detained. Mm-hmm. So when you have this force that not only is operating without legal authority, but without legal accountability, because we have not had an investigation of the killing of Renee Nicole Good. We do not look like we're going to get an investigation of the killing of Alex Pretti, at least one that hasn't already been compromised by the fact, for example, that the killers have been redeployed. In other words, they are still on duty elsewhere. Then you have the question of where do we get stability in terms of the law, justice, and the safety of these communities? But this is not just about Minnesota, because this question of accountability goes beyond ICE and Border Patrol to their masters.
And that probably highlights highlights the need for an independent investigation into these two ICE killings in Minneapolis. But there's certainly always an attempt by the American administration, by the Trump administration, even the Department of Homeland Security, to demonize the victim, or at least that's what the other side is saying. Demonize the victim, blame the Democrats, blame Democrat leaders in Minnesota or other states as well. But isn't there also a contradiction here? Because the very justification that the administration is using to portray, for example, Alex Pretti as a dangerous man was the fact that he was carrying a gun. It's a licensed gun, even though that completely contradicts and goes against the political position of President Trump himself, his allies, and even the Republicans regarding gun rights.
As I said, Donald Trump and not just Trump, key officials, the FBI Director Kash Patel, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Vice President J.D. Vance, they act with impunity. So they'll reach with any falsehood or distortion to try to smear the victim. And in this case, what they did is they trapped themselves because it is legal. I don't like it. I prefer a country that doesn't do this, but it is legal to carry a gun, including to protest. Alex Pretti had a permit. So when they came out and effectively said, falsely, Kash Patel, the FBI director, oh, it wasn't legal to carry the gun, and thereby excused the killing of Alex Pretti, the National Rifle Association, amongst others, said, wait a minute, you're saying that anybody is subject to being abused or killed if they carry a gun? And that means that Donald Trump may lose Republican supporters because of this. But I think this is just only one of the numerous damaging lies they are applying here, which raises questions that go beyond their electoral position to, is the U.S. system resilient enough to be able to survive this?
Right. What about Democrats? What can they do in this situation? We've heard from Bill Clinton, we've heard from Barack Obama, even we've heard from top Democrats in the U.S. who were asking Republicans to join them in order to overhaul ICE now, and of course protect the public. Chuck Schumer, he even went as far as threatening a government shutdown in protest of ICE policies and conduct in Minneapolis. What should we expect to happen there? And would this threat really pressure Trump to revise probably his immigration policies and his crackdown?
I think those are good questions, but I think we need to get beyond Democrats, because you saw what happened with your previous guest is that he went out and told falsehoods. I mean, he told falsehoods about Democrats to try to deflect here. He told falsehoods about Tim Walz that I could go into. He told falsehoods generally about them. This is not a Democrat versus Republican issue. So what Democrats, Republicans, and others should do, first of all, is call for an investigation into the killing of Alex Pretti. Secondly, what they should call for is that they should call for legal accountability. In other words, that there are clear guidelines by which ICE operates in terms of their engagement, and that they cannot carry out sweeping detentions without warrants and without probable cause. And third, with that government shutdown coming up on Friday, unless you pass the finance bills, Democrats and Republicans need to discuss the possibility that until ICE operates by those guidelines, it is taken out of that funding bill. It effectively is not funded while you keep the rest of the government open.
Professor Scott Lucas, thank you very much for being on the show with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Winter storms have been sweeping across the U.S., resulting in the deaths of at least 14 people. Heavy snow and freezing temperatures have resulted in power cuts for homes from Texas to New England, and flights have been cancelled and schools and roads closed, with the storm affecting around 180 million Americans, more than half of the entire population. We can now go live to Arlington, Virginia, to speak to our correspondent, Sara Firth. Sara, welcome to the show. You are standing, as far as I know, surrounded, as we can see, by snow. Give us a sense of what's going on. What are you seeing and feeling right now? And how severe are these conditions where you are, especially in Arlington, Virginia? I know the area, and it's usually at this time of year extremely cold without even a winter storm.
Yes, Rawia, you're right. There's at least a couple of inches of snow here where I am in Arlington. We're about 15 minutes or so from the center of Washington, D.C., and much of the area around here in Virginia on the outskirts of D.C. looks very like this. You've got the snow now having settled. What we saw over the weekend with this huge winter storm that has hit is this massive influx of snow falling. It was very heavy, in some cases, ice pellets. temperatures below freezing, and you had a stay-at-home warning from the authorities. You had the DC Mayor Muriel Bowser say she called on the National Guards to help with the efforts to clear some of the streets and the roads. But here in this neighborhood, you had neighbors digging out driveways with their shovels. You had people staying indoors. In some areas across the country, 2 inches of snow an hour fell. In areas like Massachusetts, you've got 20 inches of snow on the ground. And let me just show people at home, actually, Rawia, because you've got, it's this hard, compacted, like ice snow. So very, very difficult, of course, for especially the infrastructure not cut out for this type of weather. So it looks very pretty. The blue skies are out today, but dangerously and deceptively pretty, because the severe winter warning across the country remains in place.
Right. Some reports were even talking about that the rain is actually freezing once it's touching the ground, which is making the entire, all the roads and all the landscape extremely slippery. But this storm has affected so many different areas, from Texas to New England. How significant is it nationally, and how unusual is what we're seeing across the eastern United States now?
Yes, Rawia, as you said, look, this area here where I am used to cold temperatures, and many of the states affected used to dealing with the cold. But this level of snow, this scale of the storm, very, very unusual. In some areas, it's thought that the temperatures and the amount of snow that has fallen is likely to break records. You have in Washington, D.C. alone, it's been about 10 years since there's been a storm of this scale. You've got people out now salting the streets. The snow plows are out, emergency responders are still working, but most other people indoors. So it's very white, very icy, very, very cold. But Rawia, look, as I said, it is looking a picture right now, but the impact has been severe. At least 14 people, local authorities are saying, have been killed as a result of the weather so far. It's thought that number could rise, and local officials really warning people to stay on alert, stay home if they can, and really be aware of the dangers of this type of snowstorm, which hasn't hit the US in a long time.
Right. But I mean, everyone is affected, whether you're staying at home. Even if you're staying at home, you are affected because of the power outages. Even also, so many flights have been cancelled, and there's definitely a lot of chaos. But who is the most affected by this situation now, and which areas as well?
Yeah, so you've got areas like Tennessee have been affected. You've had authorities saying some of the people that have been impacted, and some of those deaths that I told you about, at least 14 at the moment, have been attributed to hypothermia. Across the country, around 800,000 homes, we're told, at the moment are suffering with power outages. So you lose the power, of course, you lose your heat, you lose access potentially to water, your lighting. So it's a very, very dire situation in some places where access to basic necessities has been restricted by this storm and the level of snow that has fallen. In the lead up to it, Rawia, we saw even here at some of the supermarkets, the shelves just absolutely empty as people tried to stock up. What the authorities have also said is, look, check in on your neighbours. The elderly in particular are at risk if they lose power. In every state, they've got provisions, so warm shelter areas where residents can go, they can charge their phone, they can get warm, they can have a meal if needed. But of course, many people will be stuck in areas where transportation isn't an option. And so that's where people are really saying to be on the lookout, community-minded. Well, I had a neighbour actually who cleared our drive, shoveled our drive of snow, which was very nice. So you've got the American sense of community coming out. But 200 million people across the country still on a severe weather alert.
Right. And looking ahead, is there any timeline as to when people can expect any relief, milder, probably weather conditions?
Yes, so in some parts of the country, you've still got the heavy snow falling. Here in this part of the East Coast, it's starting to melt a little bit. You've got the sun out. I can hear the dripping from the trees, but what local authorities have said here is, look, as the snow melts even, there's a risk of the snow and the ice from the trees falling on power lines. That takes out power in certain areas. You've still got people making the effort to clear the roads. You've got 4,000 flights so far that have been coming in and out of the US have been cancelled. Those delays are expected to continue for a couple of days. And what weather experts are saying here in the country is that, yes, in some places it's starting to thaw, but it's not going to be super quick. The temperatures remain cold enough below freezing in many places that this heavy packed ice and snow, as I said, really like hard, hard icy snow, that is expected to stay in place and cause disruptions for at least a couple of days yet.
Well, I think you should go back indoors now and stay safe and warm. Sara Firth in Arlington, Virginia, thank you very much. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. Israel says it would reopen Rafah crossing between Gaza and Egypt. That's after an operation to retrieve the body of the last remaining Israeli hostage in the territory. The key crossing has been closed since 2024 when Israel seized the Palestinian side. Iran has unveiled a new mural in Tehran's city center, warning the U.S. against a military strike. The painting features damaged planes on an aircraft carrier. Written on the mural in English and Farsi, the words, "If you sow the wind, you will reap the whirlwind." It comes as Trump moves naval assets to the Middle East. Authorities in Australia have issued heatwave warning as millions mark Australia Day. Temperatures are expected to peak today, and over the weekend, the country recorded temperatures as high as 48.5 degrees Celsius. A U.S. climber has scaled the Taipei 101 skyscraper in Taiwan without wearing any safety gear. The attempt was cheered on by thousands and live-streamed on Netflix. Over the weekend, it took Alex Honnold 91 minutes to complete the free solo climb. And thousands of people in Japan have flocked to Ueno Zoo to say goodbye to two pandas. Chow Chow and Lei Lei are being returned to China as tensions mount between Tokyo and Beijing. It will leave Japan without any pandas for the first time since 1972. To the Philippines now, at least 18 people are dead after a ferry carrying more than 350 people sank near an island in the southern Philippines. Rescuers are still searching for dozens of passengers that remain missing. Authorities are still investigating the cause of the disaster. Patrick Falk reports.
Video released by the Philippines Coast Guard shows survivors being plucked from the water and receiving medical attention. Some of the passengers who were on board the ferry could be heard shouting for help in the dark. The inter-island vessel was sailing from the port city of Zamboanga to southern Jolo Island in Sulu province and sank shortly after midnight local time. A Coast Guard safety officer that was on board was first to call and alert rescuers.
Lahat po ng search and rescue assets.
All of the search and rescue assets in Zamboanga and Basilan are involved, from the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Navy, the Maritime Police, the local government units, the Provincial Disaster Risk Management Office in Basilan and Zamboanga are also involved.
Basilan and Zamboanga are also involved.
According to one survivor, the ferry abruptly tilted to one side and took on water, hurling people into the sea in the middle of the night. But it's still not clear what made the vessel sink. Authorities are now conducting a marine casualty investigation.
But what I can say is the
ship was not overloaded. It has a maximum passenger capacity of 350. And the actual passenger, the actual passengers on board, as declared by the master list, is 332. The Coast Guard has immediately acted on it as soon as it received, or we received a distress call from the Sea Marshal on board.
We received a distress call from the Sea Marshal on board.
Sea accidents are common in the Philippines because of frequent storms and badly maintained vessels. But many people rely on them for transport between the country's 7,000 islands. Spotty enforcement of safety regulations is also blamed for accidents, especially in remote provinces. Patrick Falk, Arabiya English.
The price of gold has risen above $5,000 an ounce for the first time ever. Geopolitical tensions are thought to be behind the historic jump, with strained relations between the US and NATO, as well as the ongoing conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine. Gold and other precious metals are seen as safe haven assets that investors flock to in times of financial uncertainty. On Friday, silver also rose to over $100 an ounce, building on its ongoing rise. We're now joined by the Chief Investment Strategist at Wealth Club, Susannah Streeter. Susannah, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on with us. It's definitely a record-breaking high for precious metals. Gold and silver prices have been on an accelerating upward trend throughout last year. Gold has even risen about 60% in 2025. But what exactly propelled it over the $5,000 mark this time?
That we have this ongoing febrile geopolitical environment. So gold for now seems to know no bounds. We did have an agreement that Trump would not take over Greenland. He retreated from those ambitions at Davos. But then you saw, again, trade tensions ratchet up again, because he then said he would impose 100% tariffs on Canada because it was in dialogue with China for a new trading relationship. But at the same time, you have got these concerns again brewing that the US could be heading for a government shutdown. Now, this is all linked to the protests against ICE, the immigration crackdown in Minnesota. And there are fears that because of the real consternation that's erupted following the death of one protester, an emergency nurse, that actually the Senate might not pass the financial proposals needed to keep the US government from shutting down. And I think that has really added to the tensions and why gold is seen even more as a safe haven.
Right. Analysts also link the weakened dollar to this rise in gold. How did the dollar, now in its weakened state, contribute to this rise of gold?
That's right. The dollar's decline is part of the story. The greenback has taken another hit as concerns continue to swell about the impact of tariffs, but also high government spending and inflation on the US economy. And this has been prompting investors to recalibrate their exposure to the United States. And a weaker dollar makes precious metals more attractive to buy, given they're denominated in the currency. So as this march towards shelters offering security continues with the preservation of capital, the priority, gold and silver really are continuing to shine. And I think as all of this concern about a US shutdown ratchets up as well, I can't really see right now where you're going to see a specific trigger for any significant fall in the precious metals.
Right. We've also got the Federal Reserve's decision on interest rate this week, which is causing a lot of controversy and rattling markets. Has this or any other global factors led to the rise in the demand, obviously, for gold as people seek safe haven for their investments in this uncertain, turbulent time, certainly?
Certainly, yes, there is a close eye being trained onto what's happening at the Federal Reserve. As you say, we have this key interest rates decision this week, and now we're not expecting any cut to interest rates, but the commentary we watched very, very closely, because there is concern that actually the headline rate of inflation could be creeping up again. And overall, because the US economy is steaming ahead, there's a lot of investments into AI, but also the government is piling up a lot of debt, a lot of government spending, and there's concerns about inflation. Now, all of this is adding to worries about the direction of the Federal Reserve, because President Trump has shown signs that he wants to interfere in monetary policy and interfere in the independence of the Fed. The chair, Jerome Powell, is under investigation. a new replacement is likely, could be announced this week.
Right.
And there is concern that a future Fed chair may go softer on inflation, and that's also contributing to gold's rise.
Right. Also looking forward, according to some reports, gold is supposed to continue its rise throughout this year, possibly reaching, or some reports and predictions are talking about $5,400 for an ounce by the end of this year. What geopolitical influence do you see at play here if these predictions turned out to be accurate?
Well, I think what you would see is continued geopolitical tensions, a ramping up of terrorist threats. We've already got that again this week. We'll have to see, I think, what happens with the US government shutdown. If that can be staved off, I think there will be some kind of impact on gold's rapid ascent. But at the moment, because there are concerns about the direction of the US economy as new trade routes are established, I think it's going to be difficult to see gold really reducing, and it's likely to stay at this elevated level, if not head towards that mark.
Right, and there's no plateau that we can probably witness in the next, maybe not this year, but in the next few years with this geopolitical
absolutely.
climate.
Gold is cyclical, let's remember that. This has been a rapid ascent. And as we've seen with the historic path of gold in the past, rapid ascents can be followed by descents. And that is likely, it's just what the trigger will be. So I don't think it's going to be likely anytime soon, but I do think it will happen.
Right. Susannah Streeter, thank you very much for being on the show with us. Thank you. Let's take a look at the top business news. The yen rose to a record 2-month high today, jumping by over 1.5% amid speculation of a currency intervention by the US. The intervention by Washington will allegedly boost the yen following concerns over Tokyo's debt that stands at more than double its economic output. India plans to slash tariffs on cars imported from Europe to 40% from 110%. A further reduction of 10% will be rolled out over time to ease access to automakers such as Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz and BMW. Tomorrow, India and the EU are expected to announce the final trade pact, which has been dubbed as the mother of all deals. Turning to sports now, and in tennis, Jannik Sinner has secured a spot in the quarterfinals at the Australian Open. Sinner, who hopes to take home the Melbourne crown for a third time, beat Italian Luciano Darderi. Meanwhile, Inga Swiatek, who has won 4 French Opens and US Open and Wimbledon, recorded a victory over Madison Inglis. And the Seattle Seahawks also will face the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl 60 on Sunday in California. Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold threw 346 yards and 3 touchdowns, leading to the team's victory. Now, a reminder of our top stories. Republicans call for a full investigation into the latest Minneapolis killing by ICE agents as protests continue across the U.S. Meanwhile, a winter storm sweeps across the United States, resulting in at least 14 deaths, leaving many Americans without power. And striking gold, a historic rise for the precious metal, which reaches $5,000 an ounce for the first time ever as investors turn to safe haven assets. That's all from us on W News. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X. We'll be back in a couple of hours with W News Extra. Goodbye.